2 weeks before the Dubai trip, I was buried in vendor timelines for a stadium installation when my phone lit up. The family group chat flashed on my screen. "We've decided Cairo will go instead of you. He'll take better photos." That was all. No greeting. No apology. Just a verdict, dropped like a stone into deep water. I read it twice, then a third time, the words blurring as my pulse quickened. My name wasn't even in the sentence, only "we" and "decided," like I'd never been part of the plan. The soft hum of my office suddenly felt deafening. My fingers itched to type a response, to demand an explanation, but I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I leaned back, staring at the wall of binders I'd filled with years of meticulous work. I thought about the months I'd spent planning the trip, a gift for my father, a chance to heal cracks that had grown too wide. Now, my seat had been sold to a man I barely trusted. And that was when the quiet in me began to sharpen. The Dubai trip had been more than an itinerary, it was a promise. 10 days carved from my own savings, first-class tickets, a suite in a 5-star hotel overlooking the Arabian Gulf, desert safaris, a yacht cruise, dinner suspended in the sky. Every detail had been chosen with my father in mind, a man who'd spent decades with drywall dust in his lungs and pain etched into his knees. I imagined his face when he'd see the Burj Khalifa up close, the way his eyes would light like they had when I told him over Sunday dinner. For a fleeting moment that night, it felt like we were a family again, laughing, sharing plans, sketching out dreams. It wasn't just about sightseeing, it was about gratitude, a way to return even a fraction of what he'd given me. I thought the journey might stitch old wounds closed. But as I stared at that text message, the vision of our reunion began to dissolve, piece by piece, into something far colder. In 2018, I signed the papers for my second condo. A modest 2-bedroom with clean lines and a view of downtown Bend. It was meant to be an investment, a steady stream of rental income. But when my father's work dried up during the pandemic, my mother called, voice thin but deliberate, "We just need a little time to get back on our feet." I handed them the keys without a lease, without a deposit, for $900 a month, less than half the market rate. At first, they paid sporadically. By the second year, the payments stopped entirely. Asking turned into tension, tension into silence. Bree moved in soon after, hauling 6 suitcases, a restless dog, and stories about roommates who just didn't understand her. The unpaid rent quietly ballooned to $17,800. I tracked it all in a spreadsheet, hoping neat rows and columns could contain the resentment. But resentment has a way of bleeding through numbers, staining every interaction until generosity feels like a trap you built for yourself. Cairo slipped into our lives like a salesman who'd spotted an unlocked door. The first time we met, he shook my hand with a grip that felt more like a branding exercise than a greeting, his eyes scanning my condo as if calculating its square footage. He wore designer hoodies layered under tech vests, dropping the names of venture firms as if they were lifelong friends. According to Bree, he was a visionary in the co-living disruption space. When I asked what that meant, she blinked and said, "It's kind of housing, but smarter." He never had a job title, only ideas that required other people's money. My mother called him charming, my father simply nodded, too tired to argue. I saw him for what he was, a man eager to harvest benefits from any soil he didn't plant, watering it only with flattery. It was a quiet Sunday evening, the kind where conversation drifts lazily between courses. I waited until my father had finished his soup before sliding the printed itinerary across the table. His face lit up, the weariness in his eyes replaced with boyish excitement. He reached for his old book on desert architecture, thumbing through pages as if the trip were already real. Then Bree leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "Can Cairo come too?" she asked, like she was requesting an extra bread roll. I smiled politely. "No. It's a gift for Dad. For seats are already booked." Silence. Then Bree scoffed, her voice sharp enough to cut the air. "You're just bitter. No one's ever chosen you first." My fork paused mid-air, but I didn't flinch. My mother mumbled something about family, my father stared at his plate, and Cairo looked down at his phone, already absent from the scene he'd just fractured. That night, sleep wouldn't come. I lay in the dark, replaying Bree's words until they lost meaning, just hollow echoes against the ceiling. Something in her tone had felt final. By 2 a.m., I was at my desk, scrolling through every cancellation clause for flights, hotels, and tours. Each line read like an instruction manual for reclaiming control. I bookmarked pages, made notes in the margins, and scheduled a locksmith for Friday at noon. It wasn't paranoia, it was preparation. I'd learned long ago that betrayal rarely arrives all at once. It starts as a shadow at the edge of the room, growing darker until it swallows the light. By mid-morning, I had a list of calls to make. Emirates was first. I framed it as a routine confirmation, my voice calm, my pen ready. The representative was polite, efficient, and then she paused. Miss Calloway, your reservation was updated last week. You were marked as a no-show due to a medical emergency. My grip on the pen tightened. A medical emergency? She continued, someone claiming to be your sister called, said you were hospitalized and couldn't travel. She requested we change the ticket to her fiancé's name. My heart thudded, but my tone stayed even. Were they able to board? Another pause. A man attempted check-in under your name yesterday. He was flagged, and a fraud note has been added to the reservation. I recommend contacting our fraud department. When I hung up, I stared at the sunlight pooling on my desk, the kind of bright, ordinary day that made deceit feel even sharper. Within an hour, I had filed the report, uploaded my ID, screenshots, timestamps. Everything. By evening, the pieces aligned. Cairo had walked into the airport with my ticket, my name, and a TSA friend from college. They'd tried to slip him through security wearing my identity like a borrowed coat. And in that moment, I knew the seat wasn't the only thing they'd tried to steal. I opened a new document and titled it Dubai Recovery. In the first column, I listed everything I'd booked: flights, hotel, desert tour, yacht cruise, spa appointments. In the next, a single word: mine. The act of typing it felt like bolting a lock. The hotel was first to go. A luxury suite near Jumeirah Beach, paid in full, non-refundable. I cancelled without hesitation. Next came the desert safari, a private SUV, falcon show, dinner under the stars. Gone. The cooking class, the yacht, the spa, each vanished with a few keystrokes. Refunds trickled in, and I logged every dollar beside Cairo's name. I called Emirates again, this time to flag the return flight for security screening. If he tried to use it, they'd be waiting. Then I called my credit card company and requested a new number. Every action brought a sharp, quiet satisfaction. It wasn't revenge, it was reclamation. For years, I'd been the silent financier of their comforts, underwriting their emergencies and indulgences. Now, I was unbuilding the house they'd lived in rent-free, brick by brick, reservation by reservation. When the spreadsheet was complete, I sat back and exhaled. The trip they had stolen was dissolving in real time, leaving nothing but a list of things that were, once again, entirely mine. By late evening, I was done dismantling their vacation. The next task was dismantling their claim on my property. I called a locksmith, and by 10 p.m., every lock in the condo clicked to a new code. 2 motion-activated cameras were mounted in the hallway and above the front door, feeding directly to my phone. On the front window, I taped a notice in bold type, entry by non-tenants subject to trespass law. They weren't technically tenants, no lease, no deposit, no formal agreement, but I was about to change that. The next morning, I contacted a property management firm and paid rush fees for a legally binding lease, $2,950 per month, utilities not included, first and last month's rent due up front. A 30-day deadline to sign or vacate. Then I called Micah Hollis, a real estate attorney I'd worked with once before. His voice was steady, deliberate. "We'll do this properly," he said, promising to prepare the eviction notice in parallel. It felt clinical, almost surgical. Each step measured, documented, immune to emotion. This wasn't about punishing them. It was about setting the boundary I should have drawn years ago, one that could not be crossed without consequence. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the foundation beneath me was mine alone. 2 days later, the messages began. "Mira, what did you do? There's no hotel reservation." The guy at the desk laughed at us. "The desert safari's cancelled. The yacht cruise too. What's going on?" By the 6th message, the tone had shifted from confusion to outrage. Cairo had injured his arm on a camel ride, and now it was somehow my fault. My mother accused me of humiliating them in front of Cairo's new family. Bree said my actions were borderline illegal. I read each text slowly, as though they'd been written by strangers. In a way, they were people who had built a life assuming I would always foot the bill, even after erasing me from my own trip. I didn't reply. Instead, I took screenshots, dated them, and added them to my growing folder labeled Dubai, legal. Let them rage in hotel lobbies and scramble for taxis in the desert heat. I had no obligation to rescue them anymore. The scaffolding they'd leaned on for years was gone, and I had no intention of rebuilding it. When they finally pulled into the driveway, they looked almost casual, as if we hadn't been radio silent for weeks. My mother waved from the passenger seat. Cairo stepped out slowly, his arm in a black sling, hoodie draped to reveal just enough of his injury. I met them halfway across the gravel with a manila envelope in hand. "This is your new lease," I said evenly. $29.50 a month, first and last up front. Utilities not included. You have 30 days. My mother's brows knitted. "Are you serious right now? You're evicting your own parents?" "I'm offering you a legal contract," I replied. "That's more than I got." Cairo took the papers, scanning them like he might find a trapdoor hidden in the margins. "You can't be serious. This isn't how family works." "Then it's good we're not family," I said. He gave a dry laugh. "This could have been resolved with a conversation. You didn't need to blow everything up." I motioned to the lease. "That is the conversation." When he handed the papers back, I didn't take them. "You said you wanted a business, Cairo. This is it. Property contracts, payment terms, your final pitch." The silence that followed was the first real acknowledgement that the rules had changed. They never signed the lease. Not in the first week when I emailed them a reminder, not in the second when the property manager hand-delivered a copy with a stamped return envelope. By the 3rd week, they'd stopped acknowledging me entirely, as if silence could stall a deadline written in law. On day 30, I filed the eviction paperwork with the county clerk. 2 hours later, Cairo texted, "You're opening yourself up to serious legal consequences. My attorney will be in touch." I replied with a screenshot of the filing confirmation. Bree left a voicemail, her voice shaking with tears, accusing me of tearing the family apart over one stupid vacation. My mother sent a long email filled with nostalgia, stories about sewing my school play costume, baking my 11th birthday cake, ending with, "I didn't think you'd be capable of this. I raised you better." Not one of them apologized. Not for the stolen seat, the fake medical emergency, or the attempt to use my name at airport security. They orbited the truth like it was a planet too dangerous to land on. That week, the court date was set. I didn't change my routine. I drank my coffee, arrived at work early, and went to bed without headaches for the first time in years. Exactly 1 year after the court date, I heard the knock. Same porch, same hesitant rhythm, but this time, Cairo wasn't with them. My mother stood at the front, Bree just behind her with arms folded tight, and my father leaned on a cane, his face drawn and thinner than I remembered. "We didn't come to fight," my mother began, her voice lighter than the air between us. "We've been thinking about the trip, about you. Bree's voice barely rose above a whisper. Cairo's gone. He left when everything dried up. My father cleared his throat. They say I need surgery. My knee's bone on bone now. Medicare won't cover all of it. We just need a little help until we're stable. That phrase again, until we're stable, hit like a dull thud. I stepped inside for a moment and returned with an envelope. My mother blinked. What's this? $3,000, I said. For the knee. That's it. Bree stepped forward. So, are we okay now? No, I replied, the word flat but not cruel. This isn't reconciliation. It's accounting. They didn't argue. My father stared at the envelope as if it were both a lifeline and a sentence. Bree looked away. My mother's lips trembled like she might cry, but no tears came. I'm not angry, I added. I just don't owe you anything beyond this. They left quietly, their footsteps fading down the gravel. I stood in the doorway, watching them blend into the late afternoon light, knowing the distance between us was no longer something I wanted to close. A week after they left, a text appeared on my phone with no greeting, no punctuation. Until you fix this, you're no longer our daughter. I stared at it for a moment, feeling neither surprise nor anger, just a quiet confirmation of what I'd already known. The line between us had been cut long before, they were only now admitting it out loud. I typed my reply without hesitation. I stopped being yours the day you sold my seat. I didn't wait for an answer. Instead, I took a screenshot and forwarded it to Micah, my attorney, so it would be logged alongside the rest. Paper trails had become my second language. The message sat unread on my phone as I set it down beside the uncashed envelope I'd given them. There was something almost ceremonial about leaving both untouched, proof of where we stood. This wasn't rage, it was clarity. For years, I'd been paying into an account that never gave anything back. Now, the balance was zero. And I had no intention of opening it again. The next morning, I packed a weekend bag without telling anyone where I was going. I drove west with the windows down, music low, letting Oregon's winding highways unspool like a ribbon beneath my tires. Every mile put more space between me and the weight I'd been carrying for years. I stopped in a small coastal town I'd always meant to visit but never had the time for. The innkeeper didn't ask questions, I didn't offer answers. My room overlooked the cliffs, where waves smashed against black rock, sending salt into the air. That evening, I walked until the light thinned and the ocean swallowed the horizon. The wind bit at my hands, and for once, I didn't rush back inside. I wanted to feel the cold. In my room, I brewed weak hotel coffee, sat near the window, and thought about that plane seat. The one I'd paid for, the one they gave away. I realized I no longer wanted it back. Not the seat, not the role it represented, not the endless negotiations for a place at a table built on obligation. The silence in that moment wasn't lonely. It was clean, like freshly washed glass. I finally understood that my life didn't need their permission to be mine. In the end, her journey was not about a cancelled trip or a stolen seat, it was about reclaiming herself. The Dubai plans had been a symbol of love, gratitude, and family unity, yet those same people dismantled it without hesitation, proving that loyalty without respect is an empty shell. She learned that courage is not always loud or dramatic, sometimes, it is the quiet strength to stand firm when you are painted as the villain for protecting your own boundaries. Speaking the truth, even when it fractures relationships, is an act of self-preservation, not cruelty. True loyalty runs both ways. It cannot survive on one person's sacrifice while the others take without giving. She faced betrayal not by retaliating in anger but by acting with clarity and precision, showing that the most powerful revenge is simply refusing to be used again. In walking away, she didn't just close a chapter, she rewrote the entire story of what she would accept in her life. The lesson is clear: relationships built on obligation instead of mutual respect will always collapse. Protect your peace as fiercely as you protect your possessions. And remember, sometimes losing your place at their table is the first step toward building one of your own, where truth, loyalty, and courage always have a seat.